So now we will have two roundtables, one about cloud, and the next one immediately after, without stopping, will be about cybersecurity. If someone can close the door there. Thank you. So, Trusted Cloud, beside me, from left to right, we have Rainer Stretter, who is head of digital services for the German Ionos Group. Michel Paulin, CEO of OVH Cloud, French company. I don't have to present, I think. And Guillaume Poupard. So Guillaume, I'm sorry, I have to say two words about you because you have changed recently. So you have been known for being the managing director or president, I'm not sure, of ANSSI, the cybersecurity French authority, and you are now deputy general manager of DocaPost, a French group, a subsidiary of La Poste. And all these gentlemen are providing cloud services, of course. So I would like to start with a sort of economic question. Today in Europe, something like 70, 72 or 75, I'm not sure, % of the cloud market, cloud services market, is held by three companies. Unfortunately, no European name. You know them. I haven't to mention them. But on the other hand, we expect that cloud services revenues will grow, or some people say it will be by 5 times, some say by 7 times, between now and 2030. So there is still some place to grow for European contenders of the US hyperscalers. For you guys, what are the chances of European providers to succeed, to catch up the US hyperscalers? Well, let me start with Guillaume, and from time to time I will change the order of speakers.
Well, everybody knows that it's very simple. There are those big tech companies in the US, and maybe also in China. They are very strong, very smart, have a lot of money. They talk about billions or thousands of billions and so on. I can even not count the number of zeros. So the game is over, and it means that we just have to be consumers, good guys, and taking those fantastic services like this. Well, if we are here, it means that we are convinced that it is not the end of the game. It is possible to do cloud without billions of euros or dollars. It is possible to master technology in France, in Europe. It is possible to propose some good, relevant services for our clients. And what we observe today is that, I will talk for DocaPost, but it's the same for our colleagues. There are some people in France who are still waiting for good services to use cloud efficiently. In the education sector, for example, in the local administrations, there are very small clients, small users maybe, but it is really strategic for France to be able to propose them some trusted services to be able to do cloud. So, okay, I don't have the answer, but whatever we think, we cannot only say that everything has been done because it is wrong, and we have to keep on proposing alternatives, new solutions, which are good from a technical point of view, which are secure, which is obviously very important, and which are sovereign. Still now we can use this word sovereign. A few years ago it was very difficult to say it. Today it is much more positive for many reasons that has been said before. And I'm sure that European actors can propose this very efficiently.
Okay. I forgot to mention that we have timetable constraints, so like Guillaume...
I've been too long, sorry.
No, like you, thank you to limit to some 2 minutes by answer to question. Michel, it's your turn.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you ask this question because I think it shows that the paradigm of what has been imposed by the quasi-monopoly is still in our mind, even in Europe. What I mean is, man, do you think that in other domains, people will be astonished to say that there is competition and there is freedom of choice? And we put as a symptom, say, oh my God, this is impossible. We will have only 3 winners for the whole market, which is one of the biggest markets of the world for the moment, you said. It will be a 200 billion market. And so we were entering a sort of model where we believe, okay, there is no alternative. It doesn't exist. So we do not exist. Docapos doesn't exist. Ionos doesn't exist. OVH Cloud doesn't exist. We are too small. We are stupid. We don't have products, et cetera, et cetera. So no alternative. And because they are big, because they are powerful, because they have a strong lobbying, because they have a lot of money to buy competition and sometimes to kill competition, the rule of the games are their games, their rules. So I really disagree with the principle that we should put this action on the table. Today, why we can't say there is an alternative? There is alternatives. We are the proof. We are the proof. Public company, we are a public company. We are growing at 40% in the US. And there are alternatives. And I think we should stop to emphasize and amplify these messages that, oh, there is no alternative. There are alternatives, and we need to continue to defend what are the key differentiators of these alternatives. And I think this is where we need to put the attention. Not on the principle that the battle is over, it's false, but why European players have differentiators that these players cannot offer. That's, for me, the most important. Of course, maybe our product portfolio is not as vast, but we have some attributes that today they could not match. First, we are compliant with the laws. GDPR, European laws. We are immune to extraterritorial laws, which means that we are protecting the privacy. Second, we have an ecosystem which is very active, which is an ecosystem where it's not one winning all, but it's all winning together. And it is very important to say that. The third one, which is very important, is to say that today we are defending some principles of values, as Marc Benamou mentioned, that are not at all the same values that we have. For me, data is as important as ecology, is as important as agriculture, is as important as energy. Data is one attribute of sovereignty for states. Data is one attribute for economy, ethical, and geopolitical. Without mastering a part of your data, a country, a continent, cannot claim they are independent, at least autonomous. Without mastering your data as a company, if you do not control where you put your data, who is going to have access to your data, how your data will be used, you are not protecting your IP. Just the example of AI. I've read that, okay, the cloud is over. Again, this debate about it's over. Now we should focus on the top of the iceberg, which is AI. AI without data, nothing. Worthless. Zero value. If you don't have access to the data, if you don't control the data, if you are not able to compute the data where you want the data to be produced and computed, no way of having a good AI. So if AI is the future of tech, we might have the best scientists, data scientists, but if they have access only to American or Chinese data, the results will not be under control. I have an analogy. I say, we might have the best cooker, pâtissier, but if we don't have access to the cream and to the wheat, there is no way we can make cookies. It's exactly the same for AI. No way to make good AI if we not have access to control. So I think the debate is not, is there an alternative? I think there is an alternative, and we need to help this alternative because this alternative is very important for Europe long term. So for me, this is a debate.
So, without echoing what has been said already, we built the cloud provider infrastructure in Europe and the European DNA, the European set of values. And that's one of the key differentiators. It's not only about the proximity that we do have to the SMBs. It's not only that the SMBs in Europe started late in digitalization, in transformation into cloud. There's a big opportunity still ahead. What concerns me even more than the 70% is that we're losing shares at the moment. That's what we need to catch up with here, and we're doing. We're doing significantly well. So, as already been said, we need really to make sure what the difference is in the way we operate and we deliver infrastructure, from the standard cloud infrastructure up to the AI infrastructure and up to, and totally cannot agree more, in data is the next level. We need to build this data ecosystems, and we need to build it under a European set of values. We need to build it like we want to shape it. And if anybody wants to play with the European companies and provide services, they can do this internationally. And we need to embrace these international providers as well, but we need to do it under the European set of values and our design, how we want to operate infrastructure. Now, the Europeans here, we by nature build it the way that we think are best for our economy and best for our customers. We need to make sure that this is exported on a global level. Here, it's not a local game, it's not just a European game. We have many companies that have international relationships that play on a global level. So exporting GDPR, exporting all the things that we probably somewhat try to build under the umbrella of Gaia-X, this is something that is one of our missions. And we had it this morning as well in the inspiring speeches. What we need to do as well is that we have to find the harbor, the containers, where the European providers can together define the strengths and the standards for the next generation of data ecosystems, and then leveraging all the AI capabilities that we will see in the near future. So we need these containers, these harbors. That's one thing which is really crucial. And what we see as well, that SMBs look pretty much to the politicians, to the governments, to the decisions that are made on the governmental level. So if the governments start to pull European technology, European cloud providers, European services, then we do see that the SMBs usually follow this route of trust. So here, it's not only about building containers and building funding projects, it's about pulling local competences, local industries, local services, local cloud infrastructures. So working on the ecosystems under the European set of values, but pulling from the politics starting point the services that we do offer here, and then the SMB industry will much easier follow. And that will help to make clear that there's a significant difference between the set of values between the cloud providers in Europe and the ones from on the international level. And we know it perfectly well. We're not talking about the Asian ones that you just mentioned, that here there are more than these three hyperscalers that we do have. We have more. We have even faster growing on the planet. But there is some sort of reservation in Europe against them. Why? Because we don't trust them. We don't trust them as much as we do trust at the moment, for whatever reason, the US ones. But what we trust most is our local ones, the proximity. And we just have to make it transparent to the people out there, to our customers, that this alternative that we do provide is much more trustful than any other alternative.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot to mention the Chinese Alibaba contender, but here in France we are accustomed to it because they have been awarded the ticketing system for the Olympic Games, because they are probably the only one to know how to host ticketing applications.
It's difficult to explain, isn't it? I mean, how want we explain our people that, and the data that comes along with this ticketing system is super crucial. It's interesting. Do I want to have my data uncontrolled about this ticketing system? I'm not sure.
Okay, I have heard two important words, trusted and standards. So I have a question about trusted cloud. We have spoken about cloud in general. What is a trusted cloud in your mind? There is a debate in Europe about trusted cloud. What is really a trusted cloud? Is it something technical? Do we have to add some governance layer to this word? How do you say that, Michel?
I think trusted cloud is an important notion, and I agree with you that the definition is very fuzzy. And so sometimes our definition of a trusted cloud, which is different from a sovereign cloud, which is something for me is different, is a trust which is transparent, which is interoperable, which is reversible, and where all the networks, I would say the layers of, data, protection, technical, legally, and financially are absolutely transparent. There, I think you cannot be trusted if you're not transparent. It's, for me, it's really important. That's why you mentioned Gaia-X, you mentioned all these types of things. You cannot be trusted if you're not reversible. Why? Because it means that you're trapped. And so how I can trust someone when I'm in a prison? I can't. So I think it's very important to make sure that technically, legally, and also financially, that's why we are supporting, for example, the project of Flow in France, which is a sort of beginning start of the DMA, because there are some practices today commercially which are preventing from having a trusted cloud. As a buyer, as a customer, as a user, as someone using these type of tools, which are the most important tools of my kids, to be trusted means where are my data? Who is using my data? What are the algorithms that are using my data and are referring and promoting? The transparency of that, the capacity that I can need to switch to other tools if I'm disagreeing with what is done, is for me the definition of a trusted cloud. And we are a trusted cloud, as a Viet Cloud.
But then, Guillaume, what do you think, speaking of trusted cloud, what do you think of these hybrid offers? I don't want to start controversial words, but I mean, is it at the same level as Docker Post Cloud or VH Cloud or Yonos Cloud?
Well, my view is that we don't have on one side untrusted cloud and on the other side trusted ones. It means nothing, probably. As Michel said, we have different offers with different properties. And each user, each client, need to be able to define what he needs. And what is quite difficult to do today is to be sure for the user to know the real properties of the different offers. And this makes a link with standardization, certification, very interesting things. And let me take 2 minutes to talk about European certification on the cloud, because the link is absolutely direct. We have been working since 2018 on European certification in cyber security in general, including cloud. We talked with different member states, with the Commission, with ENISA. We talked about what should be the rules, what should be the properties we are waiting from high-level solutions of cloud. From a technical point of view, from operational point of view, we agree. We agree on almost everything. We talk about small details, but there's no real debate. But at a high level of trust, in France, we added, we need to have a kind of legal security. It means that for the clients, for the people, for the owners of the data who are using cloud, it is very important to know that the only regulation that will apply to those services, to their data, is European law. It means that Chinese law, US law, and maybe others, will not apply on those services. Said like this, for an engineer like me, it seems obvious. But you can imagine the complexity of the debate we had at the Commission with the member states on this question. For us, a trusted cloud means, again, at the highest level, trusted cloud means that only European law applies, only European regulation applies. For other people, it's totally different, of course. So this is the point where we are today. The good thing is that we are able to debate, we are able to talk about this. The bad thing is that it is very difficult to obtain a kind of consensus at the European level on this topic. And since the beginning of the Ukrainian crisis, you may say that Ukraine has nothing to do with cloud. It's totally wrong. Ukraine shows that Europe can be weak on some domains, and that, of course, we need to be very integrated with our strong allies, like the US, and the example of NATO. The importance of NATO is obvious today. But the consequence of this in the debate on cloud and certification is that many people in Europe today say, okay, can we really say to the US that we don't want their regulation to apply in Europe? It's crazy, but it's like this. So trusted cloud means we need to decide today, does it mean that only our rules can apply or not on those data?
Okay, but that triggers another question, which is how do customers react? I mean, probably, well, in this room, most people, I guess, are convinced. But what you have just said, that trust is not only about techniques, but also about warranty of ownership of the data. When you talk with customers, it's not so obvious. Do they share this view? What do we have to do to convince them? Rainer, any suggestion about that?
I think they do share this view more and more. And we did a tremendous work in the last couple of years to really focus, and GAIX was already mentioned as one of the initiatives. There are more initiatives. But what we have to make clear, I mean, if you ask the US guys and the Asian guys, do they have data protection in mind? Do they think it's a value? They would say yes. I mean, trust, data protection, that's all values that everybody has. The problem here is the interpretation of what data protection is slightly different. And we have to make sure that this fine granular distinction between the different cultures, that needs to make transparent. It's about transparency at the end of the day and saying, hey, that's how we do understand trust, trusted cloud, data protection, and how we want to implement it on a technical level. That's something we already agreed on. So there is a lot of innovation coming out of Europe, actually, adapted globally, how to build trusted data ecosystems here. So I think we're on a way to really fine granular explain what this means on a technology level, on the governance level, on the legal level, how to be able to distinguish between the different levels of trust that we have. And yes, we do this. There are certain initiatives, certification schemes around everywhere. We have to be careful with certification schemes because if the customer do not understand any more difference between 500 different certifications, how will they decide which is the best one? They just can go for everything, which nobody does something wrong, but then the whole industry has to apply all the certifications to all different nations and all different technologies. This will be a massive load on the SMBs in Europe. So we have to kind of concentrate a little bit on certification schemes that allow our customers to understand, hey, this is the interpretation of trust built out of Europe and their own set of values. And there are certain initiatives. I mean, we have SwipeHome, CISPR. We do have the GAIA-X, again, label 1, 2, 3. We just have to implement them now. I mean, they're kind of stuck since 2 years. So we're a bit impatient, actually. The industry needs to really get up speed. But again, I think this is one way forward to help the customers to understand the levels of trust that we provide and the difference between the European level of trust and data protection and the other interpretations.
Okay, can we imagine a European landscape where, thanks to common certification process and rules and standards, we could have different providers, such as you with the project, NumSpot, I never remember the name, or OVH, or UNOS. Can we imagine that a customer could say, okay, these providers comply to these standards and to these certifications, so I will pick one of them, but maybe next year I will be able to change. I know that changing from one provider to another, it's not only in cloud, it can be in banking systems and others, is very difficult. can we imagine that a sort of European place where customers would be free to choose and to move their choice?
I think it's very important that regulation should be at this level, because I think the capacity of freedom of choice and not to be locked in some mechanism, legal mechanism, commercial mechanism, or technical mechanism, because what we see is that it's a way for creating de facto monopoly and increasing year after year the pricing and changing the rules. So I think I was in the telco industry, and nobody will understand now that the portability of the number will cost you hundreds of euros. There was a study made by Cloudflake about the egress fee that some American players are using, and they have made a study about the cost of the bandwidth and the price that these players are doing. And the ratio between the cost and the price is 8,000. So it's not to build that, it's to prevent them to move away from their cloud. So I think it's very important that we give first the certification for full transparency. It's not for protectivism. Our customers deserve transparency. They deserve to know where are the data, where's access to the data, which jurisdiction and what type of rights are under the data, because I think they deserve it. Like in the food industry, you deserve to have a traceability of what you are eating. It's exactly the same thing for the data. Why it should be a black box where you don't know everything and trust me? No. Trust is transparency. The second, as you said, is to have an equal fairness. I think Gaia-X has demonstrated that technically it's possible, and especially thanks to the open source and all the type of things we are doing, that it's possible to have technical mechanism to transfer data from one cloud provider to another one. But we need to have, on top of it, legal, because most of the contracts, they prevent from that, and commercial rules to be regulated, to allow, and sometimes to impose, because the practices today are against that. And there are some practices. I just want to mention two practices today which are very common. The first one is what I call the vertical bundling. So you buy a software, but you don't know where is below, where is the data, with the cloud provider, and you don't have a choice. So you pay for a software, but in fact you take the monolithic approach, which is really a nonsense in the cloud model. So I think again, and we have some claims against some hyperscalers because of these practices, the vertical integration, which is really something that the customer should select. He should select the software, and he should select which, where, and which provider he would give. The second is the horizontal bundling. So I give you an email, oh, but by the way, you don't have the choice. You will have a video conference, you will have a chat, blah, 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 and you have to take everything. You cannot select what you want. And by the way, it's not interoperable with the rest. I think, and you've certainly seen that some hyperscalers have announced that now, because of the pressure of the European Commission, they have to slice their software to be able to guarantee interoperability in the horizontal. So horizontal bundling is a nonsense for the customer, is a nonsense for the market. And we need to really prevent the market to moving to this direction, because again, it will create de facto monopoly, and at the end, it will be at the expense of the customer choice.
Maybe another question. I'm looking at my watch. I don't know exactly at what time we should finish, but
It's tomorrow.
we will be flexible. Okay. I mean, when we say cloud, well, the first image that comes to the mind is storage. It's a place where we store data, but in fact, cloud is probably much more than that. Isn't it now a lever to trigger innovation? Michel, you mentioned AI a few minutes ago. Won't cloud services be a lever to promote AI or a fair usage of AI? Can't it be also a lever to have quantum computing capabilities in the future hosted by cloud? Rainer, any suggestion about that?
I think that's obvious. Meanwhile, we all have been surprised by ChatGPT, even the ones that deal with the topic for quite some time. And I would state now that if you don't have a quantum strategy, you should start working on it now, because it's on the doorstep. It's not miles away. I mean, companies, we are, as a Cloud Progress, investing already in quantum computing. It doesn't mean that we have tomorrow a super full-featured quantum computer in our data centers, but we will enforcer that the SMBs can use quantum computing through our marketplaces in an integrated way. Actually, 80% of the quantum computing takes place on traditional cloud platforms for quantum simulation. So there is already emerging markets coming along. Again, data is crucial for everything that comes next. It's for all the business cases that we do at the moment. The new emerging business cases that we cannot leverage now, they're all related with data and data platforms. So we have to build this data ecosystem. It will be cross-provider. Companies will not deliver their data into the big data lake and saying, hey, I give it for free or out of my control. No, they will keep it under their control. So we will have federated, we have distributed systems, distributed data lakes, we call them data spaces, with technology that allows us to share the data for the new emerging technologies. And here, building data spaces, we are one of the first in Europe, first movers. Even we saw that AWS is adapting now this data space technology. Microsoft is doing it as well. Google in a different way. This is a foundation for, as already here mentioned, that it's a foundation for the next iteration of leveraging this data via technologies like AI and like quantum computing. So yes, we are here still in the lead, and we have to keep this leadership in these certain technologies of data spaces as a foundation, trusted data spaces, foundation for building new generation of business models. And like AI to data, I mean, algorithm to data, new paradigms, these changes that we're facing at the moment allow us to get in front of the wave, on top of the wave, instead of like the first generation of cloud, where we probably are late followers. Yeah, and that's what we have. We should make sure that we're not losing it by keeping the competences in Europe, by keeping the technology here in Europe and driving it out of Europe under our set of values.
Yeah, and if I may, I just want to say that I absolutely agree with what you said. I mean, I think everyone needs to understand that the cloud is at the heart of the evolution of the technology in the future. I think the cloud, if you do not master a little bit what's going on in the cloud industry, you will not understand what we will become in the AI, in the quantic, and the next generation. Because just like the AI needs a huge capacity of computing based on GPU. So you are a big company, maybe you can afford to have this type of things. It's millions of investment in data, in hardware. But if you are SMEs, if you are a small, or you are a startup and you have to access that, how you are going to be mutualized? How you will be able to have access to this type of capacity of computing in AI? No way to do that alone. So it's really important. The same for, for the quantic. I absolutely agree with you. We need to prepare now. Everybody thinks it's the next 10 years, 5, no. Why we need to prepare? Because the software that will be developed on the quantic will not be for everyone, and it will need to be redeveloped due to the fact that the development, the type of DevOps that you need to on quantic. Who can afford to pay for a quantic? We have two quantic, we have ordered two quantic calculator today with Candela, and we work with Otto, with Atos, and Pascal. Why? Because it's a few million of investment each time. Who can afford to do that? Big companies, CEA, CNRS in France, maybe in Germany, the big manufacturing companies. But if you are a medium size or even not a specialist in tech, no way. We give access to quantic instances today already. It's available. And so you can start to develop on the quantic instances. And this is really the way. So for me, it's very important to understand that the cloud is really very important long term. And again, it goes back to the geopolitical thing. If we decline the fact that we need to have a strong European practices, I not say a monopoly, but a strong European cloud practices, it means that Europe will accept the fact that it will not master the innovation of the future.
Guillaume, the last word is for you.
Maybe I fully agree, and we talk a lot about artificial intelligence, about quantum computing. This is the visible part of the challenges we have, and we need to win those challenges, and it's not done. But we should not forget other applications. When I look in the industry, when I look in the health sector, in the hospitals, I mentioned the local administrations. Okay, it's less glamour. Do we say glamour in English? I don't know. Maybe. Yes. You understand glamour. It's less glamour than artificial intelligence and quantum computing. But this is the real need of the users. And today we still need to be able to provide them some good solutions for them to be able to use their data in a trusted environment. And they're waiting for it. They're very strong because they need it and they don't want to use any kind of solution. So in the near future challenges we have in Europe, and Thierry Breton says this very clearly, we need to be able to provide those services to the industry, and the new Eldorado for data is not personal data, it is industrial data. And okay, the past is the past. Now we also need to focus on this, to build good solutions, and to provide them to those people who are waiting for this.
Okay, so let me rebound on that, because that's probably gives an idea of the path to follow. Cloud is not about data storage. Cloud is about services. It's about applications. It's about new applications. It's probably the capability that you all will have to enhance your offers by applications, by services, is probably the key to find the way to the heart of customers. And that means also probably ecosystems, because you won't offer these applications by designing themselves yourself. You will have to create ecosystems with other suppliers, and that's probably sounds as a good news for European industry.
Absolutely, the ecosystem for your next-gen business cases.